Benjamin Franklin and the Magic Squares. A Math Reader by Frank Murphy, illustrated by Richard Waltz. Over 200 years ago, when America was just 13 colonies, there lived a super smart guy. You may have heard of him. His name was Benjamin Franklin, but most people called him Ben. This story is about how Ben invented magic squares. But first, there are a few things you need to know about this great man. Ben Franklin wasn't smart for nothing. He put his big brain to use. He was always thinking and writing and inventing cool things, even when he was a kid. When he was 11 years old, Ben jumped into a lake holding a kite. The kite was pulled by the wind. Ben was pulled by the kite. The kite flew a whole mile with Ben holding on tight. The same year, Ben wanted to swim faster than anyone, so he made flippers for his hands and feet. They worked. People still use a version of Ben's flippers today. As Ben grew older, he kept thinking and writing and inventing. When he was 23, he wrote and printed a newspaper called the Pennsylvania Gazette. People loved it. When he was 26, Ben wrote and printed a book called Poor Richard's Almanac. An almanac is a book of useful information from weather predictions and advertisements to important dates. Ben's almanac had even more things in them. There were witty sayings. Witty means clever, and funny puzzles. You know what fun means. People still use many of Ben's sayings today. Early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. Never put off till tomorrow what you can do today. Fish and visitors stink in 3 days. There never was a good war or a bad peace. Nothing is certain but death and taxes. Lost time is never found again. When Ben was 36, he invented a special stove. It kept homes warmer than a fire in a fireplace and burned less wood. Everyone was amazed. People still use Franklin's stove today. Ben never outgrew his love of kites. When he was 46, he tied a key to a kite string and flew the kite in a thunderstorm. Don't do that at home. This was not a safe thing to do, but Ben did find out that lightning was made of electricity, and electricity is used today as well. You're probably watching this with something that's using electricity. Once Ben invented a special rocking chair. It had a fan on top. That's cool. Ben rocked back and forth and the wind swished this way and that. It's really kept the flies off his head. No one else ever used this invention. Not in Ben's time, not in ours. Over the years, Ben also started America's first library, America's first fire station, and America's first hospital, too. He even helped Thomas Jefferson write and rewrite the Declaration of Independence. So you get the idea that Ben Franklin was a super busy guy, right? Then you are ready for the story of the magic squares. It started in the middle of Ben's life in 1736. That year, he became a clerk for the Pennsylvania Colonial Assembly. The assembly was a group of men who made laws for the colony of Pennsylvania. A clerk was a person who kept track of all the important decisions they made. The guys in the assembly chose Ben to be clerk because they knew he was super smart and a great writer. Ben listened carefully to the men in the assembly. He couldn't write everything down until they agreed on something, so Ben waited and waited. For days, he listened to long arguments about which laws were good and which laws were bad. For some days, Ben listened to fighting about taxes. And for even more days, Ben listened to arguments about numbers, money, city streets, state laws, until one day... The members of the assembly were not happy. "Mr. Franklin," one of them said loudly. Ben woke up. He was very embarrassed. "I'm so sorry," he said. Everyone went back to work. The men argued. Ben listened and listened. He kept his ears open and eyes open. It was very hard. Days turned into nights, and the assemblymen still argued. Ben found out it was easier to stay awake if his hands were busy. He twiddled his thumbs. He tickled his nose with his quill pen. He dipped his pen in ink and started to doodle. Ben doodled people. Ben doodled new inventions. He even doodled a doodle of his pet squirrel, Skug. The men in the assembly were still arguing, so Ben decided to doodle a math puzzle. He drew a square. Then he drew two lines going up and down, and two lines going left and right. This made 9 boxes in one big box. Ben wrote a different number in each box. He started at the box of numbers. He waited for the idea to pop in his head. Ben noticed something. When he added the numbers in the first row, they equaled 15. When he added the numbers in the first column, they equaled 15 as well. Ben wondered if he could make the numbers add up to 15 no matter which row or column he picked. What if they even added up to 15 in a diagonal line? That would be more than a math puzzle. It would be a magic square. Ben started arranging the numbers, sorting the numbers, and rearranging the numbers. Ben was thinking so hard about his magic squares that he was not sleepy at all. Finally, he saw what needed to be done. First, he wrote a 1 in the center box of the top row. So he wrote a 2 in the last box of the third row, and he wrote a 3 in the first box of the third row. See how it goes? Then Ben wrote 4 in a different box in the first column. He wrote 5 in the box in the center, then a 6 in the third box of the first row. Under the 6, Ben wrote 7. Ben wrote 8 inside the first box of the top row. Finally, he wrote a 9 in the only box left. Was it a magic square? Ben started adding. Each row and column added up to 15. Even the diagonals added up to 15. It's a magic square! Ben shouted. He had made the magic square. And he shouted UCC in the middle of a meeting. After that, Ben never dozed off at the assembly again. Instead, he doodled magic squares until either the assemblymen finally made a decision or he had a good idea of his own for them. How about lights all over the streets so people can see at night? He had a lot of ideas, like sweeping streets, gas lamps, the streets, a lot of stuff. Ben went on to publish his magic square in the newspapers and almanacs. People love figuring out the magic answers. And they still do. So make your own magic square. So you draw a square, the tic-tac-toe inside the square. See how it's like a tic-tac-toe box? So you start with the number 1, put it in the middle row, and then put the number 2 in the box that's directly above and to the left. So down there. Okay, wait, hold it! You're probably saying there's no box above and to the right of the 1. That's true. So here's what you do. Since there's no box above 1, drop down to the bottom of the column that holds the 1. Now move 1 square to the right, and there you go. Put your number 2 there. So that's why, of course, it's there and not up there. And let's see. Okay, now you're ready for step 3. So repeat step C. Look for the box above and to the right. Move 1 row. And then, yep, you're correct. There's no box to the right. So what do? Move the 3 to the beginning of the second row. Look at this. So it would have been over here. So you're going this direction. But because it's not this direction, you have to go that way. Because otherwise it would be a rectangle and not a square. Now you are ready for the number 4 just above and to the right again. And this one, it does fit. Yes, you're correct again. There's already a number in the box. So what do? At any time there's a number already in the box you want, just put the next number in the box below the number you just wrote. So put 4 in the box with below the 3. Now for the number 5 to 9, always look for a box above to the right. If you get stuck, go to step by step. If there's no box above, drop down to the bottom column, then move to the right. And if there's no box in the right, move to the beginning of the row, and so on. I would probably just copy all of this and not try to follow the directions, but it's interesting to see the logic. Ta-da! Da-da-da-da! Your magic square. What makes it magic? Add the numbers in each of the rows. Now each of the columns, and finally add each of the diagonals. What do you get? And that's something you guys can do. Add those all up, guys. Get 15, a perfect magic square. There are many ways you can make magic squares, big ones and little ones. Try starting with 9 and work down to 1. This time the 9 goes in the middle and the top row instead of 1. So you don't have to do it just with 15 to make the magic squares. Author's notes. Well, no one knows exactly how or exactly when Benjamin Franklin came up with magic squares, but we do know these things. He really did get bored when he was a clerk in the Pennsylvania Colonial Assembly between 1736 and 1751. He definitely made magic squares in 1736 and 1737. He called the magic squares his most magical magic squares. Yeah, you'd think he had a bigger vocabulary than that. He really invented and made up all the things in this book, plus a lot more. And he really did have a pet squirrel named Scrug. I have a book on him I'll read for you guys later, okay?